Hello and welcome to the Sprint Podcast. The Sprint Podcast is a meeting place for all things Agile and Product related. In each episode, we'll talk to some of the most knowledgeable people from the space and pick their brains on what is happening out there in the world of product and Agile.
So we're here to talk about our project services talent survey from 2022, what we found, and talk about some of the kind of comparison points, I suppose, to the previous year. So for those people who don't know, our talent survey goes out every year around sort of December, January time. We collect as much data as we possibly can as to what's happening in the Australian project services space. Mm-hmm. Luckily, we're getting more and more respondents each year. This year we had just over 2,000, and when I say just over, I mean literally just over. So we've got a pretty good sample size of data that we've collected, and what we've done is we've kind of delved into what are the more interesting aspects of that, I suppose, the things that people want to know about. And we've kind of, what we're going to do today is discuss those points, add some recent information to that, because a lot actually has changed since we sent the survey out back in December, January. Certainly the market has shifted. And so we can give you a bit of a kind of fresh and up-to-date perspective on those things as well. So as a starting point, shall I introduce you? Jill is our founder at Precision Sourcing. She started the business 18 years ago.
18 years ago. Coming up in July.
Which is mad for somebody who's only 25.
I know.
And Jill recruits the BA space as
Correct.
well, and has been doing so for many years. Craig Sibley, he is our principal team lead recruiter for the project delivery space.
Glad that he knows.
Just made up.
He's on your team. You're reporting to him.
Project management team lead officially, but
Craig oversees anything to do with the traditional delivery space. Is that fair?
yeah.
And I'm Kris. I lead the Agile space, so my focus is really around kind of Agile coaching and Scrum Master roles. So between the three of us and our colleagues Charlotte and Mitch, we cover all of the project services space, from traditional delivery through to the Agile world and into product. So those are the people who have effectively answered these questions that we sent out, right? So it's people from that whole spectrum. I thought what we could do is I'll throw out some of the more interesting stats and bits of data, and we can kind of just discuss, I suppose. The first thing is, it seems like from 2021 to 2022, the things that people find or think of as being the most important when they come to move roles has changed. So in 2021, in order, the first thing that people were looking at was the types of technologies that they were going to be exposed to in a role. Then it was salary, and then it was flexibility. I wouldn't have picked tech as being the top of that list, by the way. That was a surprise. That has changed in 2022. So now more than a third of people are saying salary is the most important thing, number one, followed by culture, and followed then by flexibility. So what do we think?
I think it's probably reflective of what's happening in a broader sense with the market. Obviously, interest rates are going up. There might have been a bit of a softening in terms of the market as well. People might be sensitive to that. I think they want to focus on cash, because that, for a lot of people, they're under a lot of cash pressure. And I think that's why that's become like the number one, as opposed to the others, which might be seen as nice to have. That's what I see.
I agree.
And inflation's like 7% as well, isn't it?
It's mad.
Everything's going through the roof. So I do see that, but then on the flip side, you've got candidates wanting higher salaries, higher rates, but they, in my head, they've kind of already had that, like last year and the year before. Like they've just constantly been going up, and now clients are like, now we need to cut cost. So clients are trying to push it down, candidates are trying to push it up. It's really hard to kind of meet their expectations.
Money's more expensive now, isn't it? So organisations have got to think a little bit harder about what they're spending on their resources. But I can see why it's more important to the people. It's interesting that flex has stayed as number 3. I think the conversation around flexibility is changing. It kind of was.
Yeah, definitely.
Felt like during COVID it was obvious everyone was working from home, and then thereafter I think most people had the opportunity to work from home 4 or 5 days a week if they wanted to. Then that sort of became 2 days a week on site, and I feel like more recently it's become 3.
Yeah.
And I kind of see that as an evolving piece, and I don't know if it's because people aren't as bothered about it, or organisations want more control, more visibility. What do you reckon?
I think as maybe markets have slightly come off, there's been a drive from leadership people to maybe exert a bit more control and get people back into the office a bit more. They want to see what's going on. Maybe they might feel it's more productive. I have very few roles that are 100% remote.
Have we seen any of those in the last?
I've not seen any remote roles, but I've also equally not seen any full-time 5 days in the office either.
True. No, you don't.
I
I don't
spoken
get
with
any.
candidates in organisations where they're 5 days, and those candidates are just leaving, like
Right.
doors, revolving door.
It does feel like a lot now to be in the office 5 days a week. So do you think that piece is done and dusted at kind of 3 in, 2 out?
I think that's where it'll land.
That's where it'll land.
It
I
seems
do
to
as
be
well.
a good compromise. You can get that sort of collaboration time and then still have the flexibility of 2 days from home. I think another thing, and it kind of touches on money and working from home, is candidates who come and say, I want a rate increase from what already is fairly inflated rate, and I want 100% work from home. And even if they're wanting, like, so for me to say BAs that are coming in wanting 1,100 a day, and then they want to work from home 100%, I just say to them, in this market, you're going to be fishing from a much smaller pond than maybe 3 or 4 months ago. And I think it's just to be realistic about that and kind of address what their priorities are. If they're really motivated to get into work quickly, then they might need to be a bit flexible around.
I feel like people are becoming more flexible. I haven't had anybody recently digging their heels in on that sort of thing. Everything's like, this would be ideal, but I would accept.
I've still got quite a lot of candidates that are quite. Yeah, I feel that they might be perhaps lagging a little bit behind on where the market's at now.
Yeah.
Maybe 2 or 3 months. 2-3 months ago, you could have got that, but the market has slightly shifted. It's still busy. There's still a lot happening, but there's less happening.
Yeah.
So
we're coming out of boom times, aren't we?
It's all about supply and demand. When they are in huge demand, they can really be the ones that call the shots to a certain extent.
And they have been doing that, haven't they, over the last couple of years?
It's maybe going to more of a balance now, which I think is healthy.
Yeah.
I think.
What's your thoughts on clients' willingness compared to what it was last year to actually accept candidates from other states?
So you're saying 100% remote?
Fully remote from different states.
Depends on the role. If it's and it depends on the organisation as well. So I do have some roles, pipeline roles that are coming in that are 100% remote, but they're based in regional Australia. So that's going to be very hard for them to recruit large scale data BAs for a massive program of work. So they, realistic have to do that. Yeah. But if it's like a Sydney or a Melbourne-based role, they tend to want Sydney or Melbourne-based people.
Yeah,
I've seen that as well.
It's definitely shifted a little bit more though. Like I found the last 18 months or so, there's a lot more willingness to look at people in different states as long as the skill set was right. Now it's kind of shifted back to how it was. Or they're expecting them to fly in, fly out.
And pay for it.
Yeah, so there's definitely a lot more of that coming around. Even like with niche skill sets as well. I've experienced that where they've gone, that candidate's right, we want him to basically work out of Sydney, or they'll just reject them and try and find someone in Sydney. Which I disagree with personally. Like, you should hire based on skill set.
It was working during COVID and thereafter.
Yeah.
It would still work now.
Yeah.
But it's just the economic changes, I think, is the visibility thing.
Yeah. But also maybe more people are in the office now, so they need to be there.
Perhaps. It's one of them, isn't it? It's like the more people you have in the office, the greater the need is almost to have people in the office, sort of thing.
Yeah. It's an evolving thing, though, this, office malarkey, because I speak to clients, I speak to my contractors, and people are going in the office, but they're not even going in together on the same day. So people are commuting, going in the office, and then sat on meetings online anyway. So it still needs work, in my opinion.
Let's move on from that point, because we have got a little bit to get through. One thing, it's funny, some of these stats in their own right aren't massively interesting, but when you compare them as a year-on-year thing, they sort of do become so. In 2021, only about 38% of respondents said that they were planning to upskill in some way during the year. That's gone up to 49% this year, which I think is quite a significant increase. And I've got my own ideas as to why that might be, but why do you think there's a shift, and why do you think more people are maybe looking to upscale and get certifications compared with last year?
Fear, I think, maybe will play a part. Obviously, the market is changing, and obviously it comes across doom and gloom in the news. I don't think it is as doom and gloom as what it looks like, but I do think there is a lot of fear from candidates where they feel like, oh, you know, I need to look like I'm upskilling, I'm learning new things so that I'm proving my value. Yeah, I think. I could be wrong, but that.
Yeah, I'd say the same. People are just a little bit nervous maybe. There's a little bit of unknown still with what's happening in the economy, even though we discussed it that we're starting to see an upturn again in terms of how busy it is. But yeah, I definitely think fear.
I wonder if part of it is people who are upskilling in new areas.
Yeah, maybe wanting to switch.
Change from one area to another within project services, or even getting out of it entirely. I wonder if there's a little bit.
I think that a lot of that did happen, didn't it? Where people kind of throughout COVID decided to have a bit of a reevaluation on what's important and what's not. And then quite a few people might have changed.
Yeah, it's true.
And that can actually, you know, some people actually enjoy that learning piece. So it might just be more of like a hobby.
Yeah, true.
Yes.
True.
One thing I'd say though, as recruiters, I've never really had a candidate that we recruit for be rejected because they're not certified.
Never.
There's certain hiring managers who might have close affiliations to certain bodies that would lean towards that type of person that might have that particular certification, but I've never had it where I've got a really good business analyst who's been picked to the post by another BA that's got on the basis of a certification. So it would make me question if you're doing that just for trying to get ahead in career-wise, I'd probably save you money.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think it's ever come up for me, not once.
And you work in Agile where it's like...
It can be very theoretical sort of thing, and it just doesn't. Mind you, I suppose the difference is if it's somebody who's looking to get into the space, and they don't have the experience to back up, it kind of shows like a willingness, and it shows that they're trying, which I think is powerful at that point.
And if that's the motivation for doing a certification, no matter what level you are, I think that's great. I think it's really important to always be learning and developing yourself.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And I agree with that. And also you can, I'm thinking of BA certifications and groups. It opens up a massive network for people in the same field, and kind of that can be really beneficial, that sort of being part of a community.
All right, at this point, I don't know how I feel about this one. I don't know if it's right or if this has changed. At the time that we sent the survey out, we got to start back to say that 55% of the market were planning to hire in 2023. I already think that's quite low compared to where we were. It felt like everyone was hiring, and that's anecdotal. I couldn't give you a figure on like how many organisations were hiring, but it felt a lot higher than that. So do you think that 55% is
that has gone down, hasn't it?
Do you think it's gone down again?
Do we have a comparison there?
Not from last year, no. Only like...
So this is like the last 6 months we think it's gone down, right? Yeah.
Or has it? Because 55% is low.
You think that's low?
I think 55% is low, yeah.
55% of the project services market are hiring in 2023.
Yeah. Like just based on where we've been with the boom, it felt to me like everybody was hiring.
Yeah, that definitely has dropped. I'd say that's probably quite accurate. Yeah. Just over half of our customers will hire this year.
Yeah.
But then also there'll be, churn and
of course,
general people leaving and replacing.
So that doesn't even necessarily reflect growth, right? That could just be steady headcount and managing your churn, I suppose. And it has changed, right? I think we've certainly observed, without being doom and gloom again, a lot of these things that we're discussing maybe sound doom and gloom, and it's not. I think the kind of January to March quarter was probably one of the quieter periods of time that we've seen in a long time. It seems to be picking up a little bit more now, and my gut feel is that as we move closer towards the new financial year, it will pick up further, because we are having those conversations now where clients are sort of saying what's happening in the market, we're thinking about this, we're thinking about that. They're just not I don't think that confident yet on pulling the trigger. What are you guys seeing across delivery and beer?
I think that 55% is about right. Like, I'm having conversations, especially like you say now, April, May, moving into approaching the new financial year. A bit contradictory in a way. I'll speak to one client and they're like, "Now we're cutting headcount, we're cutting budgets, we're not going to be hiring, battening down the hatches, so to speak." And then you speak to another client, and they're like, "Yeah, we're planning for a huge transformation. We're going to be looking to hire, July onwards as well." So,
do you think it's dependent on industry at the moment?
No, I don't think so. Do you reckon?
Yeah, I think there's certain industries that have had hiring freezes that are about to start kicking off again, maybe like retail, where they've hired heavily on the e-com side and then readdress where their priorities are and then going to go again. I've seen that quite a lot.
Yeah. There's been like hiring freezes in the early part of the year that have now finished, hasn't there? So it feels like government and banking have been pretty consistent.
Yeah, they never drop off really, do they?
But I think banking again, they've also gone through perhaps a bit of a refocusing on where they've got to prioritise. Maybe even not necessarily a resource thing, but money, time priority. Like regulatory stuff, that's kind of got to be done by a certain time. That's still
things that are non-negotiable. Cyber, regulatory. Anything where if you don't do something, you're going to fall behind the market and the competition and things like that. I think they have to continue doing them.
I suppose that the benefit of the way that we work is that we focus on the skill sets and not the industries, right? So we're able to manage candidates where certain industries might be quiet, others might be booming, and so we can still offer opportunity, which I think is good. It's kind of a defensive play, really, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure.
All right. This is an interesting one. 45% of the market secured their role through Recruiter in 2022. Sorry, 45 in 2021, 53 in 2022.
Yeah, I thought it was higher.
Yeah. So a bit of an uptick. That kind of surprises me, actually. I would have thought, I don't know, in a market boom. Oh, but it was candidates that were shy, wasn't it? So maybe organisations needed to lean on their recruiters more to headhunt people.
I think that's about right. I thought it would have been a higher increase, to be honest, because there's no candidates. Unemployment went down to 3.4 at one point. 3.4%.
Down that way now, isn't it?
Is it?
Yeah, 3.5, something like that.
So I think clients were relying on recruiters much more because everybody was just busy, and they just didn't have time to kind of do it themselves. So I think they were just like, "I'll give it to the recruiter, they're the experts."
What do you think that figure will look like over the next 6 months?
I think it'll continue about the same because I think, unfortunately, a lot of talent people have been let go. And then tend to see in these cycles, and it's already started happening, upturn in contract recruitment, and they'll often go to agencies for that as well. So I think it will at least stay the same, if not grow a bit.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's one of them. Things have slowed down a little bit. There are organisations who are hiring. I'm seeing a fairly high percentage of my client base trying to hire themselves. Fair enough. Some of them will be successful, some of them won't be, and those who aren't will inevitably end up coming back to the agency because whilst it's a little bit easier to recruit right now, it's still not easy. There's different challenges.
Yeah, definitely.
People are maybe a little bit more tentative. People are maybe a little bit more resistant to moving right now because of the perceived uncertainty in the market. So I think it's only a short matter of time until we start to see more of a trend back towards agents.
Yeah.
It's my gut feel.
I've had 2 customers in the last 24, 48 hours come to me, put out adverts. One of them got 94 responses to a BA role and had only one that they could interview.
Really?
Quality wasn't there, you mean?
I wonder why that is then.
Well, I think people might just see analyst or something and then just pop their name in without perhaps reading specifically what they need. And then that hiring manager's obviously had to take the time, and it might take them a bit longer than it would maybe us to go through all of those CVs and see if they're right. And then so that's like a day's work, and then come out with one interview, which then was unsuccessful. So I think there's that challenge that you're kind of getting flooded with applicants and being able to get through those in a timely manner to get the right person.
Yeah, it's time consuming, isn't it? Like, it is literally a full-time job for an office full of people here trying to find the best candidates for organisations. So if you're one hiring manager who's got a day job and you're also got to get through 100 applications.
I don't think that's changed though, has it? Like that is...
I reckon there'll be more people applying
they would put a job advert out and they would have a lot of applications and they would sift through them, or they would give it to a recruiter.
Talent teams have been trimmed down as well, haven't they? So that support within the organisations also sort of disappeared to a point. It's interesting to look at the survey and kind of talk about salaries and such. So the survey, as we said, goes out to all different types of people across product, agile coaching, Scrum Master, business analysis, all that. Salaries last year, I think this sounds high as well, and you guys can maybe give me a bit more read from your space, but the median salary for a permanent role in the project services space last year was 195k, and the day rate was 1,100. Do you think we're still there? What are we seeing with rates? I know we touched on it before. What are we seeing with salaries?
That salary would be high.
That feels high to me.
Unless it's package or something, yeah.
It's about right for my market, but I suppose. Yeah.
Like, I have seen agile coaches going in on sort of 200k, just over, but the majority of it would sit certainly beneath that 195k benchmark.
I would be going between about 150 and 180 base, dependent on... Yeah. Dependent on pay.
180k base.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dependent on skills. Some higher if it's specifics in financial services or something. Mm-hmm. And rates to them, 1,100 inclusive would be at the top end, I'd say. Again, though, you can get 1,200, 1,300 if they've
There's
got
always the anomalies, isn't it?
Financial market experience. Anywhere from, I reckon, averaging as base about 850, 900 to about 1,100.
Yeah. I've seen a pretty significant shift towards perm in my world, across agile coaching and Scrum Master,
I feel like that in PMs, to be honest.
Yeah. That's interesting, because that's always been contract heavy, hasn't it?
More contract.
I wouldn't say it's predominantly permanent now, but it's definitely more of a focus on it, yeah.
My space in the agile world, rates have definitely stabilised, and I have seen there's people that I've known for a lot of years who have had to look for roles recently, and they have been a little more flexible on the rates, which is probably a sign that overall rates could come down. Yeah. But again, nothing like significant sort of thing.
Yeah, that's why I like project managers. Very pragmatic.
It's true.
They could be on a rate in the previous role of 1,200, 1,300, but they go anything above 1,100. But I get this, and this. Like, I'm good to go.
Yeah.
Just like straight to the point, which I quite like.
That's good.
They're not unrealistic. Like, I was on 1,300 in my last role, so I want 1,400 in this one. It's like there is a ceiling. Yeah. And once you get to that ceiling, you need to start looking at other things that tick your boxes.
I think they were mostly the kind of main points. There's a few other bits in here, but I think those are kind of the main things that people would be interested in hearing about. So the reports can be found the town survey can be found on our website. We've got them on LinkedIn as well, but you can message either Jill, myself, or Craig at any time if you want to get a copy of the survey and or talk about any one of these points as well. And if you've got anything to add, of course, we would love to hear it, because people in the market know what's happening as well as we do. All right, cool. Thank you.